Hey, this week, starting on F sharp. Welcome to jamplay.com. Welcome to week 7 of Fretboard Roadmap. And we have been exploring up and down the neck using 3-on-a-string scales. And we've been doing several things with our 3-on-a-string scales that are improving our playing. We've been learning the notes on the neck in the context of the key of G, but it's still an incredibly good exercise and will help you put together different places on the neck and be effective playing all over the place instead of just one scale, because you're learning the key of G everywhere. We've also worked on a great deal improving technique. We have worked on alternate picking, we've worked on consecutive picking, we've worked on legato playing, we've worked on a variety of sequences that have helped drastically improve our hand synchronization. And every week what we've done is we've learned a new position. This is the last new one we're going to learn for the series. And we have done sort of a mini workout with it, starting with a reasonable tempo, kind of a slow tempo, and working up in tempo to where it becomes comfortably challenging. And then we've done the same thing with our sequence. So this week is no different. This is the last week that we're going to be doing scale pattern, sequence, drone, practice over the drone, and then practice over the track. After this, for the last 3 weeks of the course, we're going to be putting all the patterns together using different tracks, some over G, tonal center, and some over G as a tonal center, but some over all the other tracks we've been doing. So you're going to see how every single one of these tracks will work with every single one of these patterns. It's really a cool feeling when you have this much variety that you can implement. So before we get started, last week was starting on E. The previous week was starting on D. Are there any questions or comments? How's the practicing going? I've been seeing a lot of you test for badges on these, and you guys have been doing a great job. It's fun seeing you guys improvise over the tracks. It's fun seeing you guys do the little workouts. It's been really great. Any questions or comments before we dive in?
Not so far.
Okay. Let's go right for the scale position. Starting on F sharp, we're all the way up here at the 14th fret. If you're on an acoustic guitar, this may be a little bit of a challenge, because if you're on an acoustic guitar that doesn't have a cutaway anyway. If you are on an acoustic guitar, or something that doesn't have a cutaway, you can always take it down to 2nd fret and do the same thing. Okay? Let's learn it up here, and then I'll demonstrate it in both places, because we're not using any open strings here. This will be helpful for those of you who don't have quite the cutaway advantage. All right, so here we go. 14, 15, 17. 14, 15, 17. 14, 16, 17. 14, 16, 17. So 14, 15, 7, 14, 15, 17. 2 of those. Then 14, 15, 14, 16, 17, 14, 16, 17. Then 15, 17, 19. Then 15, 17, 19. So it's kind of neat because we've got essentially pairs on every 2 strings. It's one of the most flowing versions of the scale, I feel like, in terms of all the different patterns that we could be using. Back down. Fits over a diminished chord. Ugly. Okay, a couple more times. see it an octave lower, just for fun. Some good reaches. Definitely with this one, if you're trying to play with your thumb over the neck, there is no way. Maybe here, but you're going to have to adjust your finger position there. Let's take it to the click. Starting with 90. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. $110. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. $120. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Let's go to 130. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. And why not 140? 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. $150. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. there's your workout. That's probably my ceiling for right now. Starting to get just a little behind there. I started to feel myself tense up a little bit. So I'd want to back it down to 145 and play there for a few minutes. If I get it solid at 145 without tensing up, push it back up to 150 and see what happens. Any comments or questions before we go on to the sequence?
David said it was close quarters for his fingers.
Yeah, yeah.
And we also, the F-sharp drone link is not working, so we'll work on that.
Okay.
Get that up soon.
Now this sequence is an interesting sequence, and it definitely works well with alternate picking. All we're doing is we're playing each note twice. So take a look at the PDF, or take a look at the tab, and you'll see the other one starting on F-sharp sequence. There we go. Yeah, I mean, what we're doing is we're changing it to groups of 6. So, and you really, you know, as we've said throughout this whole thing, you can play groups of 3. When we start with our track or our metronome here, working this, we're going to play it as groups of 3, even though it's notated as 16th note triplets, just because it's easier to subdivide. So don't get hung up on that. As long as you're sticking with it, as long as you're doing consistent subdivisions, whether it's 3 or 6, that's totally fine. But here's how this is going to sound without the click, and then I'll go ahead and put it with the click. Nice about this is you have 6 per string now, and so you lose that awkwardness that 3 per string gives you when you're doing alternate picking. So let's work that. We'll start at 90. One, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Oh, well, hold on. You know what? I need to feel that out a little bit. There we go. So yeah, we are going to need to go in 6 for this one. So we'll start at 70. Da 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 da. Yeah. So the reason that didn't work initially when we had an 8th note sounding click is because it was too hard to play the triplet feel, the groups of 3 feel, over the straight 8th click. That would have been extremely difficult to do. So da 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 da. That's what we want to have in our minds. Da 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 da. Let's go down to 60. Make it a little easier for us. Da 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 da. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3. to 70 again. 1 and 2 and 3. 1 and 2 and 3. 1. Okay. Now, let's take it over to the drone. Are there any comments or questions? It's a weird sound, isn't it?
No. Nothing else right now.
Okay. So this is where it becomes fun to just, even though this one's not as practical as some, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to experiment down here as well as up here. Now, one of the great things about playing over the F sharp tonal center, particularly with starting on F sharp or starting on the 7th degree of the scale, is that it prevents you from doing this, which you're probably already wanting to hear. You really want to hear that because it's in the key of G, and F sharp is the most unstable note out of all the notes in G, and the 7th is the most unstable note out of all the notes in the major scale. Something kind of interesting, and well, actually we can do it now. If we play starting on D over the F sharp, check out what happens. Of course, I resolved over to F sharp. It's the same notes, right? And this is sort of a sneak peek as to what we're going to be doing later. You naturally want to gravitate towards that note because you trained your ear to hear that tonal center. Notice how different this sounds. Even though we just got done playing a couple weeks ago, we got done playing with this starting on D in a very different context. This is really what you're going to start discovering more and more here. This is, each one of these positions can do whatever you want them to do as long as your ear is fixated on the right tonal center. As long as your ear is focused where it needs to be, any one of these scale patterns will work. That was starting on G. I just made sure and pegged the F sharp. Same thing everywhere. So, experiment with that a little bit this week. Get familiar though. This position is really, really fun in other tonal centers, so it's good for us to learn this. Okay. All right. There's got to be someone who wants to say something.
Yeah, we've got one question here from Lane Katz. Do you guys recommend learning theory and reading notes?
You know, I learned theory and continue to learn theory mostly through ear training. And believe it or not, by going through this course, we're sneaking quite a bit of theory on you. You're learning a lot about the major scale just by going through all of these different patterns, by doing the ear exercise and playing with the tonal centers and in naming notes as you go through, in being conscious of what notes you're playing over which tonal center. So I do recommend learning theory and reading notes. Reading notes, I think if you want to be like a session player, you know, jazz musician kind of person, then reading notes is useful. But I think reading charts and having a good understanding of the major scale and how the chords move and how to play by ear is probably more important. That said, learning theory is a huge part of learning to play effectively by ear. Okay. Let's check out this track. Whew. Ugly sounding. So I'm going to learn that. play along with that. And I'm going to start by playing along with the track, starting on F sharp. And I'm going to start down here, and I'm going to riff a little bit before I go in and try to solo. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to get good and comfortable with the vibe of the piece. And I want to make sure that even though it's good to play the scale linearly, I want to develop some motifs that don't necessarily sound linear. And the best way to do that starting off is to play along with the riff. There's been a bunch of times where I've wanted to play that note, which doesn't sound too bad over the track, but it's not in the scale. So be careful that you're not doing that. Be careful that you're not doing that. Make sure that this is one of the key tones that makes starting on F sharp unique sounding. It's that relationship there. So I'm going to start again, and eventually I'll work my way up here. track and start it over. All right. So that's starting on F sharp. It's not a pretty sound. It wants to resolve to G, but it's an important pattern to learn. It's an important pattern to learn not only because you're starting on F sharp and to get familiar with that sort of sound, but also because it completes the 7 different patterns of the major scale 3-in-a-string patterns. So, if there are no other comments or questions,
we do have one.
Okay.
That's relevant right now. From Lane, Cats again. Since I'm a beginner, what lesson should I do to learn the scales?
Well, even beginners can. I learned these as a beginner. You just want to start at the very beginning of the course, starting on G. And take it slow. You know, these scales are not difficult. What makes them difficult is how you implement them. But if you are a beginner and you want to start learning the fretboard and you want to start, you know, getting all over the place, in the key of G, especially with this course, start slow. Do the exact same things that we're doing, but start slow. And if you do, even as a beginner, you're going to be amazed at the different sounds you're going to be able to hear and come up with. And you're going to be amazed at how well your technique improves over the weeks. And we can take all questions now if you want. And once we are done with questions, I'm going to review every single one of the scale patterns as sort of a preparation for the following week.
Okay, here's a gear question from Greg. Unrelated, but maybe you can advise. I need an interface that will allow me to route backing tracks from the internet to a site like Jamplay, allowing me to play along to them and not have them be heard over the speakers. Neighbors are killing me.
Yeah. You need an interface that will allow me to route backing tracks from the internet to a site like Jam. Do you mean from a site like Jamplay? So there's a couple ways you can do this. You don't necessarily need an interface if you're just playing the backing track. You could get a set of speakers that just have an 1/8" connection and plug into your computer. But if you don't want the neighbors to hear without having them be heard over the speakers. Okay, I see what you're saying. So you probably want your guitar and your tracks to be in headphones. So there's a couple things you can do there too. I would recommend getting an inexpensive interface like a, gosh, what are they called? Focusrite makes some nice ones. Avid makes some nice ones. They're like $150. USB interfaces that work with both Windows and Mac. And then what you can do is you can plug in your guitar to the interface, but also set your main system audio out on your computer to that interface, and then use something like Bias FX or Waves GTR, some guitar software, and boot that. And then everything will be played through headphones. That's probably the best way to do it. The Fast Track series, I think they still make it, the Avid Fast Track series, includes a guitar direct in and headphone out. And so, like I said, you'd go USB out of your computer, and then you'd plug in your guitar into the Fast Track, and then you'd set your main system out to go through the Fast Track as well. And then when you play a backing track off of Jamplay, the audio will go through there as well as your guitar. And then you'll have some leveling to do, you know, like turn your guitar plug-in or your guitar software up or down. I do that a lot when I'm practicing. Put on a set of headphones, I have a Fast Track interface. It's called the Fast Track Duo. But they also have a Fast Track Solo if you don't care about recording more than one thing at a time. The other thing this does is it gets you into the realms of guitar playing, of recording your guitar playing. And one of the things that's really great is I would recommend, if you have something like this, don't just play the tracks off of Jamplay. Download them and import them into a recording software like Audacity, which is a free recording software, GarageBand if you're on a Mac. Import the tracks and then play your guitar along with the tracks, but record yourself and then listen back. It's a very easy way to do it. And if you are doing an interface and direct guitar, you're already most of the way there. So definitely recommend recording yourself. Good question.
Okay, from Jason, tension and resolution is pretty noticeable on this scale. You mentioned this was diminished. Does that have anything to do with it?
Yeah. Yeah, the diminished is the ultimate intention in the major scale. The seventh degree is the diminished tone. And so it always wants to lead somewhere else. But the beauty of playing with the drone track and this track is that we've centered ourselves on the tonal center. Even though it's unsettling, you don't necessarily want to hear a G chord in there. You want to hear the F sharp. Like it sort of makes sense the way it is. But absolutely, it's because it's the diminished. That's it for now. Okay, cool. Well, let's take some time. I'm going to go over every single one of the scales that we've learned so far. We're not going to go on and play with all the different tracks. I just want to do a quick review in preparation for the next week. And I'll do it to a tempo of 90 beats per minute. Without delay. 1, 2, 3, 4, starting on G. Starting on A. Starting on A. B. Starting on C. 1, 2, 3, 4. Starting on D. 1, 2, 3, 4. Starting on E. And starting on F sharp. All right. So those are all 7 of the 3 on a string patterns in the key of G. Next week, we're going to look at connecting those patterns, and we're going to be looking at primarily connecting all of those patterns over a tonal center of G. But we'll look at some of the other tracks too and see how fun it is to merely switch around your tonal center. So all tracks, all drones that we have explored in this course so far are fair game for the next 3 lessons. Just keep that in mind. And you could even do some advanced experimentation if you get this last F sharp file or last F sharp scale down well. So anyway, next week we're gonna do all patterns primarily over a G tonal center, connecting all of them. And then the following week we're going to look at doing sequencing over primarily G, but then we'll also do different tonal centers as well. And then after that, we're going to look on developing your soloing using the 300 string scales. Fun stuff. Listen to some Joe Satriani too this week if you can, because he does a lot of great things with these 300 string scales. How are we doing?
Good.
Okay.
No more questions at the moment. So.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. We'll see you next week for exploring all the patterns. Practice up. We'll see you there.